Well, it's been a little while since I've had a Seiko in my collection. Recently, I bought a King Seiko, but that's not exactly the same, even though it's basically the same company. But it really felt like it was time to get another Seiko, because for some reason, all the Seikos that I've owned have ended up leaving my collection. So it was definitely time to get a Seiko. And this time, I think I went a bit all out and got something really special. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I'm talking about watches. And yes, I'm talking about a very, very special Seiko Presage watch. I'm a big fan of Seiko, and I'm actually a really big fan of their Presage lineup. I've owned a couple and I've really, really enjoyed them. But as how it happens with me and watches, they eventually left my collection. I've had my eye on the Presage range and all the different models, and I've almost bought so many of them. But there was something holding me back, and I think the idea of what was holding me back was that I was looking for that extra special watch. And today, I'm going to share with you what a watch that I think is extra, extra special. Because not only is this a Seiko Presage, which generally means a very nice looking sort of dress watch, but this one is an anniversary reissue, or at least it's a reimagining of a reissue of watch. It's a 110-year anniversary for Seiko, or at least when they released this watch. They released a couple of different versions. This is the more sort of wearable version with an enamel dial, with lots of different sort of things going on the dial that I'm going to show you. And I think I'm just going to show you because this one really needs to be seen to be explained, because when you just look at it, it looks really nice. But once you start moving it around and catching the light, well, let's flip the camera and let me share with you my first impressions of this Seiko. So this Seiko Presage limited edition SPB401J1 arrived on my doorstep, and I was super, super excited about it for a number of different reasons. Not just that it had an enamel dial, not just that it was the Presage lineup, the SPB401J1, not just because it was an anniversary edition, but because it was a beautiful watch. And when I did open it, there were 6 things that stood out to me. And of course, the first thing that stood out to me had to be that white enamel dial. Just look at it. How could it not stand out to me? It is something that is absolutely beautiful. And the second thing that stood out to me is these 2 subdials. I really like how they've fit into this particular dial, how they've designed it to work in, and I think it just looks really great. Because this sub-dial here, this is the date, and then you got your power reserve. So, of course, when you wind this watch up, you can see that little hand moving. The third thing that actually stood out to me is the counterbalance on the second hand. It's got this lovely little crescent. And how cool is that? And talking about those hands, look at the blue color of them. They're absolutely beautiful blue on that white. But then the next thing that stood out to me is this red 12, because we've got white, black, and those blue hands, and that flash of the red is actually really nice, and it's appreciated, and I enjoy seeing it there. But then the next thing that stood out to me is the size of this watch. It is a beautiful size watch. Now, I've owned quite a few Presage watches in the past, and they're all very nice, but I do find sometimes they're a little bit thick. This one, I don't know if it's thinner than the other watches I've had, but it just seems to work really well, and a nice size when on wrist. And the last big thing that stood out to me is this deployant clasp. Personally, it's very good, but what I also like about it is once you press the double pushes to undo it, you then have to press the double pushes again to undo this little flap, which gives you that little bit of added security once it's actually on the leather strap. Just like that, because now it is locked in unless I press those buttons again to then release it. So it actually gives it a little bit of a safety feature there, so you're not going to lose this watch off your wrist. But I want to come back to these blue hands because this is not a particularly cheap watch. Seiko makes sort of lots of watches at different ranges. This one's not one of their cheap ones, which is why I emailed them before this watch arrived to ask them, are they blue hands or blued hands? And they came back to me and says, yes, they're just blue hands. They are not heat treated. If you want a heat treated blue hands, you should be looking at the Grand Seiko range, which, well, I found that a little bit funny and a little bit disappointing because not a cheap watch, no blued hands. It is meant to be an anniversary edition, but I guess it still just looks lovely, so I'm not complaining too much. The overall case is very nice. There seems to be some light brushing on the tops of those lugs and some general polish throughout the rest of the watch, but it's just a nice case design. And when you wind up this 6-arm movement, It's actually a really nice winding experience, very light, and you get to see that movement through that see-through case back. Now I'm a little bit unsure about this backwards strap. This is how this watch comes, and this is how Seiko puts a lot of their watches, and I haven't quite adjusted to it yet, because normally obviously it goes the other way around. So I'm keeping it like this for the moment, because this is how we're meant to be wearing this watch, but let's see how long that lasts. But as you can see on my 17cm wrist, it's actually looking really nice, and what an absolutely beautiful watch. I'm already enjoying this one, and I think I'm going to be enjoying it longer term. So stick around for a full in-depth review of this one in about 4 to 6 weeks. I seem to have a bit of a back catalogue at the moment, so it might end up being a little bit longer, but definitely one that is worth some attention and being shown off in some nice, good video footage in the future. But whilst we wait for that one, maybe watch these 2 videos next.